Welcome back guys. Now in this video let's discuss about the motor pathways. Okay, now we all know motor pathways are descending pathways. Why? Because ascending are the sensory pathways. Okay, now descending motor pathways which are also nothing but the efferents. Efferent means motor. We have already discussed the motor neurons are called as the efferents. Okay, now first of all let's discuss about the cortex. Okay, let's start from the cortex. How many motor areas are there? Okay, see, just try to recap. What is the sensory area in the cortex? All the sensory information, general sensory information, touch, pain, temperature, pressure, okay, even advanced senses. Now all the sensory information is going to a part of cortex which is called as the somatosensory cortex, which is located in post-central gyrus. The post-central gyrus or the Brodmann's area number 312. Okay, that's your sensory cortex or somatosensory cortex. All the sensations are going to the somatosensory cortex. Then which part of cortex is controlling the motor movements? The motor movements are controlled by motor cortex, which is divided into three areas. Already we have seen in the previous videos. The precentral gyrus is called as the motor cortex. Now this motor cortex is divided into three areas. Okay, premotor cortex, primary motor cortex and supplementary motor cortex. Okay, premotor cortex, primary motor cortex and supplementary motor cortex. These are the three parts of the motor cortex. Okay, now this premotor cortex is mainly involved in setting of the posture. Okay, setting the posture for a particular motor movement. Okay, now this primary motor cortex execute the final motor movements. The final motor movements are executed by primary motor cortex, the Brodmann's area number 4. Okay, and supplementary motor cortex. See, this is a supplementary thing. It helps in coordination. Okay, coordination of movements is done by supplementary motor cortex. Primary motor cortex helps in final execution of the motor movements and premotor cortex helps in setting of the posture of the body, setting the posture of the body for any particular type of movement. Now we will discuss about them later, but now let's start with the motor nervous system. Now in motor nervous system what are there? Descending tracts are there. Now from the cortex information have to come down to the, I shouldn't say cortex, from the brain information have to come down into the spinal cord. Okay, so descending tracts from up to down, from brain to the spinal cord. So these are the descending tracts. Now how many types of descending tracts are there? Okay, we'll see. Now these are descending tracts, there are mainly two types. Okay, for example, see, first type of descending tract, it is starting from the cortex, the upper motor neuron. The upper motor neuron is starting from the cortex and that upper motor neuron is coming down into the spinal cord. Okay, the upper motor neuron is starting from the cortex. Okay, even the brain, from where it is starting from the cortex. To where it is going down into the spinal cord. So this is called as corticospinal tract. So corticospinal tract. So what is the first type of descending motor pathway? The first type of descending motor pathway is corticospinal tracts. Now which are also called as pyramidal tracts. Okay. Now what are the second type of motor pathways? What are the second type of descending motor pathways? The second type of descending motor pathways, they are not starting from the cortex, guys. They are not starting from the cortex. They are starting from the level of brainstem nuclei. Okay, they are starting from the brainstem nuclei and they are coming down into the spinal cord. From the brainstem nuclei, upper motor neurons are starting. Now these upper motor neurons are coming down into the spinal cord. Okay, later they will control the lower motor neurons. Here also, the upper motor neurons are coming to the spinal cord and in the spinal cord they will control the lower motor neurons. Here also, the upper motor neurons are starting from the brainstem nuclei. They will control the lower motor neurons in the spinal cord. First of all, see, the difference is where the upper motor neurons are starting. In corticospinal tract, the upper motor neurons are starting in the cortex. In the extrapyramidal tracts, the upper motor neurons are starting in the brainstem nuclei. Let me show you the same in this image. Okay, you can clearly see the two different images. Now see, these upper motor neurons, please appreciate guys, here are the upper motor neurons. These upper motor neurons, from where they are starting? They are starting from the cortex. This is the cortex, right? So the upper motor neurons are starting from the motor cortex. Okay, the upper motor neurons are starting from the motor cortex. Now, here I want you to know this one point. Sir, how many motor cortex areas are there? There are the three important motor cortex areas which we have seen. Remember, these upper motor neurons, yes, they are coming from the motor cortex. But remember, majority of the upper motor neurons, almost 40% of the upper motor neurons, they will come from the sensory cortex. Okay, see, we all know the post-central gyrus, which is called as the somatosensory cortex. Yes, it is sensory cortex because it is involved in processing the sensory information. It is receiving the sensory information, that's why it is sensory cortex. Okay, not only that, this sensory cortex will also give rise to upper motor neurons of, like the motor, it also gives rise to upper motor neurons, the motor pathways. Remember, the most of the upper motor neurons, yes, they do come from somatosensory cortex. Anyway, see, from the cortex, upper motor neurons are starting. See, now just trace down the path. Now these upper motor neurons via the internal capsule. Okay, see, here is the internal capsule, here is the lentiform nucleus, here is the thalamus. Now via the internal capsule, see, these upper motor neurons are coming down. See, these are all the upper motor neurons. Now what is this structure? This is the midbrain. Now they are coming down through the midbrain. They will come through the pons. Now see, these upper motor neurons, they are coming into the medulla. In the medulla, we all know there are these structures called as, see, this anterior structure, these structures are called as pyramids. Okay, these are the pyramids, and laterally there are olives, right? Pyramids and olives are there in the medulla. Now these upper motor neurons are coming like this, and they are coming like this. Now see, they are going through the pyramids. That's why these are called as a pyramidal tracts. Okay, so the corticospinal, from the cortex, these fibers are coming down into the spinal cord. So these are called as corticospinal tracts. Not only that, these fibers are also called as a pyramidal tracts. And why we are calling them as pyramidal tracts? Why? Because these upper motor neurons, they are going through the midbrain, they are going through the pons, they are going through the medulla. In the medulla, they are passing through a region called as the pyramids. Now what will happen? Sir, majority of these neurons, upper motor neurons, 80%, how much? 80%. 80% of these upper motor neurons, they will cross to the opposite side, or they will cross to the contralateral side in the medulla. So this crossing is called as pyramidal decussation. Now these pyramids, okay, they are going to cross. Okay, so these pyramidal tracts, they are crossing to the opposite side. This is called as, see, decussation, pyramidal decussation. Now what will happen? Now once they are crossing, see, now they are crossing to the contralateral side, and they are traveling into the spinal cord. Now in the spinal cord, where they are? Now in the spinal cord, are they present in dorsal column? Are they present in anterior column? Are they present in lateral column? See, these are coming down into the lateral column. So these are called as lateral corticospinal tracts. See, these are corticospinal tract. So from the cortex to the spinal cord. But where they are traveling, 80% of the upper motor neurons, they will cross to the contralateral side, and they are traveling in the lateral column of the spinal cord. So that's why lateral corticospinal tracts. Lateral corticospinal tracts. Okay, now what happens? See, now this lateral corticospinal tracts, these are nothing but the neurons, right? These are the upper motor neurons. Now what they will do, these upper motor neurons, now they are ending, please appreciate, now this one fiber, now it is coming and ending where? Now this first order neuron, or I should say this upper motor neuron, is terminating onto the ventral horn of the spinal cord. This is the ventral horn of the spinal cord, right? This is the ventral horn or the anterior horn. We all know the ventral horn of the spinal cord is motor in nature. So this upper motor neuron is going to control the lower motor neuron. The upper motor neuron is traveling in the lateral column. Now this upper motor neuron is going to its end. It will come and end in respective segments. Okay, now this upper motor neuron, it is ending where? Onto the ventral horn. Now from the ventral horn, who is coming out? This is the lower motor neuron or the alpha motor neuron. It will go to the skeletal muscle. It will cause the contraction of the skeletal muscle. So upper motor neurons control the lower motor neurons. Lower motor neurons goes to the skeletal muscles and helps in the contraction of skeletal muscles. Okay. Important point here is, see, this is the lateral corticospinal tract. But say 20% of the fibers, please appreciate here. See, majority are crossing to the opposite side. That is called as a pyramidal decussation. But 20% of the fibers, they are not crossing to the opposite side. They are traveling ipsilaterally. Okay, no crossing is occurring. They are traveling ipsilaterally. They are coming down. See, they are coming down to the spinal cord. But where they are traveling? They are traveling in the anterior column. This is the anterior column, right? See, this is coming like this, traveling in the anterior column of the spinal cord. But the statement is all upper motor neurons at the end of the day, they have to cross to the contralateral side. All the upper motor neurons, they have to cross to the opposite side. But majority are crossing in the medulla. But minority, only 20% of the fibers which are traveling as anterior corticospinal. See, this is cortico, this is spinal. So this is traveling in the anterior column. That's why anterior corticospinal tract. Now this anterior corticospinal tracts, yes, they do cross to the opposite side, but at the level of spinal cord. In the level of spinal cord, these anterior corticospinal tracts are crossing to the opposite side, and now what they are doing? Now they are getting terminated onto the lower motor neurons. So even they will control the lower motor neurons. Okay, so direct question. The lateral corticospinal tract. The lateral corticospinal tracts are crossing to the contralateral side in the medulla. But the anterior corticospinal tracts, they are crossing to the contralateral side in the level of spinal cord. Okay. So how many types of corticospinal tracts are there? So the corticospinal tracts are of two types. One is lateral corticospinal tract. Okay. And the other is anterior corticospinal tract. Both of these are descending tracts. Okay. Both of these are corticospinal tracts. No doubt. So these are one type. Now let's talk about the extrapyramidal tracts. Okay. Now what are these extrapyramidal tracts? See, they are not coming from the cortex. They are not originating from the cortex. See, there is this area which is called as the brainstem. Okay. Here is the brainstem. Okay. Now brainstem includes what? Midbrain, pons, medulla. Now in this brainstem there are different nuclei present. Okay. All these are the different motor nuclei. Okay. All these are the different motor nuclei, which includes the red nucleus. Okay. Which includes the red nucleus. Reticular formation or the reticular nuclei, vestibular nucleus, different nucleus are there. Now the upper motor neurons are going to originate where? Now the upper motor neurons are originating in this brainstem nuclei. Okay, so pretectal nucleus, from the pretectal nucleus, vestibular nucleus, okay, red nucleus. So from here the upper motor neurons are originating. Now they are also coming down. So these are also descending tracts, no doubt. These are also motor descending tracts, but they are not originated from the cortex. So that's why these are called as extrapyramidal tracts. They do not travel through the pyramid. Okay, they do not travel through the pyramid. And one more important point is, see, out of all these extrapyramidal tracts, one important tract is the rubrospinal. See, starting from the red nucleus. Here is the red nucleus. Now, from the red nucleus, see, the upper motor neurons are starting. Please follow this red color line. Okay, now starting from the red nucleus, now this upper motor neuron, it is coming down. See, it is crossing to the contralateral side. Now it is coming down into the spinal cord. So this is called as from the red nucleus into the spinal cord. This is called as a rubrospinal tract. Okay, one type of extrapyramidal tract. From the red nucleus to the spinal cord, rubrospinal. Here are the tectal nuclei. Okay, here are the tectal nuclei. From the tectum to the spinal cord, these are called as the tectospinal tracts, the blue color tract. From the tectal nuclei to the spinal cord, these are called as the tectospinal tract. And please appreciate, here are the green color nuclei present. Now this green color nuclei, which are called as the reticular formation or reticular nuclei. Okay, now this reticular formation, from here the upper motor neurons, see, they are coming down like this into the spinal cord. These are called as reticulospinal tract. Okay, these are reticulospinal tract. And here is the vestibular nuclei. Okay, vestibular apparatus is there. No, from there, like here all the fibers will come here. But anyway, here are the vestibular nuclei. Now this vestibular nuclei, from here the upper motor neurons, they will originate and they will come down. Important point is, see, this vestibulospinal, from the vestibular nucleus to the spinal cord. Important point is, this vestibulospinal tract, it do not cross to the opposite side. Okay, vestibulospinal tract, it do not cross to the opposite side. Okay, so now tell me, how many types of extrapyramidal tracts are there? So mainly, okay, there are also voluspinal, different types are there, but mainly, sir, rubrospinal, tectospinal, reticulospinal, vestibulospinal. So 4 different types of extrapyramidal tracts are there. Okay, 4. See, that's why extrapyramidal tracts are further divided into tectospinal, reticulospinal, vestibulospinal, rubrospinal. And remember, all the time rubrospinal is something special. Okay, what is that? We will discuss later. Rubrospinal is very advanced. Okay, so something very advanced. And corticospinal tracts. Now, these corticospinal tracts are of how many types? We have seen the corticospinal tracts are lateral corticospinal tracts. 80% of the fibers will cross to the opposite side. 80% of the pyramids, they will cross to the opposite side. But 20% they are traveling in the same side, which are called as the anterior corticospinal tracts. But at the end of the day, even anterior corticospinal tracts, they will also cross in the spinal cord and they will control the lower motor neurons. Okay, now let's discuss about the important point, guys. Upper motor neurons, from where they are arising? So the upper motor neurons, okay, in the corticospinal tracts. In the corticospinal tracts, they are arising from the cortex. Now cortex is having many layers. Actually, there is this neocortex which have many layers. Okay, now upper motor neurons are arising from the layer number 5 of neocortex. Now these upper motor neurons are called as the bed cells. Okay, bed cells. So upper motor neurons are arising from layer number 5 of neocortex, which are called as the bed cells. Okay, now 30% of the upper motor neurons are coming from primary motor cortex, 30% are coming from the premotor as well as supplementary motor cortex. But remember, 40% of the upper motor neurons, they are coming from the somatosensory cortex or post-central gyrus. Okay, post-central gyrus. The majority of the upper motor neurons are coming from the sensory cortex. Okay, already seen, 80% of the upper motor neurons cross to the contralateral side and travels as lateral corticospinal tract. But 20% of the upper motor neurons They do not cross. They are traveling as anterior corticospinal tracts and crosses to the opposite side in the level of medulla. At the level of medulla or in spinal cord, it will also cross. Okay. Now, see this image where we are showing the cross section of the spinal cord. Okay, this is the cross section of the spinal cord. Now here we can clearly see where are the motor pathways, the blue color things, whatever I am showing you in blue color. See these blue color areas, here are the axons, or I should say here are the ascending tracts. All the blue color things, whatever I am showing you here, all these blue color things are the ascending tracts. Okay, already we have seen the ascending tracts are mainly how many types? Sir, anterolateral tracts. These are the anterolateral tracts. Anterior, lateral, anterolateral tracts and dorsal column tract. See, whatever I am pointing you right now, see, this is the dorsal column tract. What are the dorsal column tracts? Fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. See, fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus. Advanced sensations are traveling here. From the body, the advanced sensations are traveling in fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, already discussed. Okay, and also we have discussed about the spinothalamic tracts. Okay, spinothalamic tracts. Which spinothalamic tracts? See, here is the anterior. This is the anterior spinothalamic tract. Here is the lateral spinothalamic tract. This is the anterior spinothalamic tract, which is carrying a crude touch and pressure. Okay, crude touch and pressure are going through the anterior spinothalamic tract, discussed. This is the lateral spinothalamic tract. Lateral spinothalamic tract carry temperature and pain sensation. Temperature and pain are going through the lateral spinothalamic tract. So we have only seen, sir, anterior spinothalamic tract, okay, lateral spinothalamic tract, together called as the anterolateral pathways, okay, anterolateral ascending pathways, okay. But not only that, from the spinal cord, even information is also going to the cerebellum. They are called as the cerebellar tracts, spinocerebellar tracts. So these things, see, spinocerebellar tracts, posterior spinocerebellar, anterior spinocerebellar, even spinocerebellar tracts are also there. Okay, spinocerebellar tracts are also there. Okay, so that's not that important. Anyway, what I am trying to put in your mind is anything which you are seeing in here, okay, blue color, anything which you see here, blue color is a ascending tract. It's going to the brain. It's going to the brain. Now, the things which you are seeing in green color, these are the descending tracts. Now, tell me how many types of descending tracts are there? The two different types of descending tracts are the corticospinal tracts, which are the pyramidal tracts, as well as the extrapyramidal tracts, Rubrospinal, decussates, 𝐒𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐼𝐻 spinal, all these tracts. Okay. Now, here, please see, here is the lateral. This one is the, okay, this triangular area. Okay, this triangular area, it is, see, what is it? It is a lateral corticospinal tract, the 80% of the fibers. Okay, the 80% of the upper motor neurons, they are crossing to the opposite side in the medulla. And they are traveling where? They are entering into the spinal cord and they are traveling in the lateral column of the spinal cord. Okay, this is the lateral column of the spinal cord. Now all these upper motor neurons are going down. Okay, so this is the lateral corticospinal tract. If there is lateral corticospinal tract, there is also anterior corticospinal tract. See, here is the anterior corticospinal tract. You see, it's the anterior, this one. Okay, which is most medial, right? Now this is the anterior corticospinal tract. See, here is the lateral corticospinal tract. This is the anterior corticospinal tract. Now, what are the extrapyramidal pathways? Extrapyramidal pathways include Rubrospinal, Reticulospinal, Tectospinal, 𝐒𝐵𝐵𝐼𝐻, Vestibulospinal, different types are there. Now, you can see here is the Rubrospinal. Okay, Rubrospinal. Here is the Reticulospinal. Okay, these are the Reticulospinal. Here is 𝐒𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐼𝐻 and Vestibulospinal. Okay, different types of tracts are there anyway. Now, point is, see, now that these descending pathways, okay, in one way they are classified into lateral motor pathways and medial motor pathways. See, these are the motor pathways, right? These are considered as the medial motor pathways. Okay, these are considered as the medial motor pathways, which are more medial. Okay, these are more medial. Now, see, this is lateral corticospinal tract. Okay, this lateral corticospinal tract, and also see this one. This is the Rubrospinal tract. These two. Okay, the lateral corticospinal tract and the Rubrospinal tract. This one. It's a Rubrospinal. Okay, it's a Rubrospinal. Now, these are considered as the lateral. They are present in the lateral, right? They are present in the lateral most part of the spinal cord. They are present in the lateral column. Now they are under the lateral motor pathways. Okay, so who are coming under the lateral motor pathways? Corticospinal, lateral corticospinal, and Rubrospinal. These are advanced tracts. Okay, they are what they are doing? They are associated with advanced fine movements. Okay, fine skilled movements. Okay, they are going to control the distal muscle group. They are going to control the distal muscle group. For example, writing. Okay, sieving work, painting. Like, anything which is like, which you are doing very precise sieving work. Okay, so now these pathways, these are the motor pathways. Yes, they are controlling the motor movements. Which type of motor movement? Fine movements. Okay, they are controlling the distal group of muscles. So that's why corticospinal tracts and Rubrospinal tracts, they are considered as the lateral motor pathways, which are involved in advanced fine skilled movements. But the other pathways, the medial motor pathways, which includes mainly the extrapyramidal pathways. Now all these extrapyramidal pathways, they are involved in motor movement. Yes, they are involved in motor movement, but not the fine motor movements, the gross motor movements. So the gross motor control, gross movements are because of the medial motor pathways. Okay, reticulospinal, tectospinal, vestibulospinal, they are controlling the gross motor movements like posture, tone, balance, while walking. So these are the two important points which I want you to know. So with this, we also have discussed about the descending pathways and important type of descending pathways and their functions. Hope the video is helpful. Thank you.